So I feel like God was telling me I'm not gonna reduce a man to a statistic, whether white. I'm not gonna look at a statistic on the internet. I seen a statistic earlier on the internet that said the median income of the white household was $171,000 a year, and I thought to myself, man, I missed that buzz. I don't even make half of that, bro. I make about 70.
You just ain't there yet.
Yeah, well, yeah, maybe yet, but I still ain't there. So that statistic is a lie, bro. It's to promote a narrative.
And that's the thing, is like a lot of people are taking those narratives and they take those statistics. And you gotta think about it. When you hear a stat, you gotta ask whose calculators that comes from
and whose perspective.
Exactly.
Because for every look, I can find. Let's just throw some out there. Let's talk. Let's say systemic racism. I could find statistics that say it exists. I can find statistics that say it doesn't exist. And both of the people putting those statistics out there are normally federal bureaus.
Right. So, and here's how you can view that, Charles. We used to have this saying that if you dig for a booger long enough, you'll find one.
Your booger? You'll find one.
So that means if you want to look for stats that favor your argument, guess what? You're going to find them.
You're going to find them.
If you look for ones that disagree with your argument, you're going to find them. So it depends on what you're looking for. Yeah. So if you're looking for racial inequality, guess what? You're going to find it.
Hey, you know what? I want to find a stat that maps out political corruption.
Hey, I'm sure you're not going to find many of them. They're going to hide those stats.
So, but let's talk about this right now, because these are some hot topics. But let's talk about systemic racism.
Okay, so let's do this in point of view. So let's say systemic racism point of view. That as is one point of view, we're gonna view this one as
Is it? Let's say this. Is it real or is it fake? My personal opinion, I think there is definitely some realness to it. So if I look at developmental psychology, I cannot say that the pure hatred and oppression that black people or people of color suffered in this country for hundreds. I'm not even gonna say when the first slave came to the States, because it wasn't the States yet. It was just colonies.
Right.
But let's say even after we became the United States, 1776, and then the Civil War was like 100 years later. Well, I hate to tell you, but racial equality, they didn't just all of a sudden decide to free the slaves and everything was rainbows and lollipops and racial equality was at the forefront of their mind. There was absolute hatred, inequality, social injustice, all the way up until really 60s and 70s. You still finding stuff that is crappy, shady. And then when you start to look at the system, you start to find things like, banks redlining certain neighborhoods that are predominantly black and not giving them loans, not putting money in their neighborhoods. You start to find things like, and not saying that still goes on today, because I haven't found one article that can prove that still goes on today. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I'm not saying one way or the other, but it definitely went on in the 60s and 70s, which would be your dad.
Yeah.
My dad.
Right.
Which is, that's like throwing a rock across the street. That's right there.
Yeah.
That's not that far down the line to where all of a sudden the black communities have just recovered from all of that oppression. And we could talk about CIA agents flooding the black neighborhoods with narcotics. We could talk about politicians flooding neighborhoods with narcotics. We could talk about, just all the shady stuff that has happened in the black communities. And it's absolutely affected young black men and women in drastic ways.
Yeah.